Do you ever have those moments when you are reading a text or watching a video with your language learners and you would like to do something more with it besides asking text-related questions or inferential questions or even summarizing the text or the video? Perhaps this text presents just the right amount of cognitive challenge, also covers important, useful content, has solid academic vocabulary, as well as some juicy English, and you want your students to interact with it a little bit more so they can internalize the information and the vocabulary and to start owning it. Well, this happens to me all the time. In one of my videos where I share my I See, I Think, I Wonder spin-off activity, I do talk about how I build a little structure that allows my students not only to understand what they're reading about, but also to steal the juicy language and then to add it to their language repertoire. But I also wanted to develop an algorithm that could be used universally with different texts, without pictures or with pictures, and also maybe videos or audio material. And guess what? I found my answers in what I call my Writing Bible. I'm sure most of you have heard of this book. It's called The Writing Revolution. I strongly recommend. I see growth in my students' writing every time I use something from this book. They have all kinds of outlines. So the other day I decided to work with this summary sentence outline. This outline here that offers to write the what or who, what they do or did, when, where, why, and how. They will write down details on these dotted lines and then come up with a summary sentence using these details. It allows for them to process, to internalize the information they're being presented with, and to then come up with a beautiful cohesive sentence. I do have to tell you, the more you use this book, the easier it will be to teach your students to write this sentence cohesively and logically and grammatically correctly. But you can expose your students to this assignment even before you finish all of the initial steps that this book recommends. Let me show you what we did yesterday and today using this outline. Because cicadas are a hit this summer and there are literally thousands of them flying around and some of them are trying to get into our classroom, I thought it would be very appropriate to read a text and or to watch a video about them. So I found this video titled Infected, Decaying, Zombified Cicadas. How much cooler can it get? We're going to be talking about cicada zombies. And also the presenter in this video talks rather slowly. It also offers some clear titles, and all of those are very good scaffolding tools for our language learners. So for step number one, you might want to lead some before text or before video work to clarify the topic, concepts, and some key vocabulary. In my case, I actually skipped this step just because I knew my students already had so much background knowledge about cicadas and actually have had a lot of hands-on experience with cicadas. So I wanted them to figure out the new ideas in this video from the context based on what they already know and what they are being presented with. However, if you're about to present them with a text or video that touches upon concept and vocabulary that you know your students are not familiar with, you definitely want to present them with at least some key vocabulary and some clarifications of what you are about to present them with. For step number two, and in my case, again, this was step number one, I had my students watch the video. After they did, I asked them to share with me any vocabulary, any ideas, any concepts they were able to grasp from watching just this one time. And this is what they ended up writing. Cicada zombifying fungus, replaces body parts with a fungal clump of spores. This should be with a clump of fungal spores. Missing body parts, infected with fungus. Abdomen is replaced with fungus, spreads when they mate. I also asked them some other guiding questions that they were not able to answer, and so I asked them to watch it one more time, and I also asked them to listen for an expression that the lady used to say that the fungus didn't affect the numbers in cicada population. So for step number 4, they watched the video again and listened for specific information. I asked them such questions as how it was spreading, what was special about the way the male were fluttering their wings, and so on, and also for that expression. After we did, I checked their responses, and one of my students did hear the expression. The lady said that fungus didn't put a dent in cicada population. So here is our juicy English. This little expression, put a dent in something. For step number 6, I gave them this sentence summary outline from the Writing Revolution book. They once again worked with details a little bit more. I helped some of them with some of it, and others were able to do it on their own. And then I asked them to write a summary sentence where they would pull all of that information from above into 1 or 2 cohesive sentences. Now, some of their responses ended up being very sophisticated and others not so much. At that point, I didn't care how probably grammatically correct they were, the spelling and all of that. I wanted them to work with the details, using the newly learned vocabulary, and to put it into a logical sentence or 2 to show what they have learned. I also wanted to draw your attention to my follow-up. So the following day, to help them refresh the new vocabulary and concepts, and also to show that they understand them, I asked them to complete yet another activity from the Writing Revolution book. It's called Because, But, and So sentence expanding activity, where you give them a kernel sentence. For example, here I have cicada zombifying fungus replaces its body parts with a clump of fungal spores, and then they would add because, but, and so. So as you can see, this kind of activity requires for them to use the information they learned from the text or the video and to put it logically based on the conjunction they're using here. And of course, you can imagine how elated I felt when most of my students used the expression after the conjunction but. It didn't put a dent in cicada population. And finally, I want to add that this activity was part of my summer school curriculum that I wrote for my ELL students in grades 6 through 12. And I am more than happy to share with you everything I have created for this summer school. We did work quite a bit on some academic vocabulary, with the word abstract being our favorite, probably because it evolved into an art project where all of my students painted their own abstract pictures, and then we did a lot of stealing juicy vocabulary kind of work where we were reading different descriptions of famous abstract paintings, and then we did some close activities as well as some Kagan structures to work with the vocabulary and the content. And then as the final product, my students wrote a descriptive piece of writing using another outline from the Writing Revolution book. I especially enjoyed observing my students study their classmates' paintings and then filling in their multi-paragraph outlines with details that they were observing using vocabulary they had learned from the texts we had read before, and then pulling all of it together in their own descriptive piece of writing as a final product. Another idea we worked on was a text about toxic pollutants. I do want to make a separate video about my favorite strategies of working with texts with some heavy academic vocabulary. I love creating interactive tasks and activities for my students so they can learn to apply the new vocabulary and ideas and concepts that they are acquiring through texts. Please stay tuned. I will post those videos on my channel and share them in my favorite Facebook ESL related groups, as well as in my own Facebook group, Aliona's ELL Class Live.